It's all yours,
All
bud.
right. I think we're live, aren't we?
Yeah, buddy.
All right, man. Well, welcome back to all the foodies people to the BDSM podcast, booze, desserts, smoke and meats. This is Professor Porkloin with my lovely co-host.
The Meat Viking.
So we are moving along, chugging along, man, with different topics. So we were talking about cider last time. This time we're gonna do some classic cocktails, and I think we have kind of come up with a nice little list of some old-timey cocktails and kind of, I guess, a little bit of some stuff about them.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, we got to pick a safe word for the day.
Trying to think.
Something not related to cocktails.
Well, most of the recipes I've seen were kind of like the early 1900s recipes, which would fit right around the time of the Industrial Revolution. But Industrial Revolution is too many
Pretty
words
long.
to say. So maybe just revolution?
I mean, I guess that could work. Doesn't really have a food type of thing with it, but
That's fair. That's fair. Oh my God, those fancy cherries you put in the drinks. Machino.
maraschino cherries.
Maraschino.
All right, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Because that will fit right in with some of the drinks we'll probably be talking about.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. I use it in a couple of the ones that I make.
All right, sweet. Well, then moving along to the next part. Then, what do you got in your cup today?
So those of you who tuned into last week's episode know that I had the Edmonds Fitzgerald Porter from Great Lakes, and I picked up another sixer of that, and that is what I have today.
That's what you got in the cup today. Well, I, on the other hand, went to the store the other day, get some materials for some donuts that I made, which I could probably put some pictures up later on for that one. But I saw this one and I had to pick it up. It's a Mexican cerveza, but it's called Adios Pantalones. So for all the people that don't speak Spanish there, Adios Pantalones means goodbye pants.
Goodbye pants.
So it's beer with lemon and lime. I mean, it kind of tastes like a Corona or some other type of, Mexican-y beer, but it's brewed in Texas and it's pretty good. It's not that potent. It's only about 4.5%, but I just picked it up just because of the name. It was one of those marketing strategies that they did. Adios Pantalones.
Now, you brought up something called Corona, which you can find that anywhere. But one thing I like doing with my Corona is after I add the lime in, I come behind it with some Cajun seasoning, give it a little extra kick.
Oof.
Yeah.
Me and the spices, I don't usually like that with my alcohol. See, I like throwing in grenadine.
That's fair.
That's also another one. You just tip it over a little bit and got a nice little red tip. So
I've seen a recipe where you essentially take like 2 sips of the Corona first, and then you add grenadine, and then chase it with vodka behind that to fill like back what you've already replaced with the beer. Never tried it because I'm not that big on vodka, but
yeah, I probably wouldn't do a whole lot on that either because I'm not a big vodka person either. But I've heard of tons of other things that people do. They'll put in like bourbon and then, so I guess it just tickles your fancy to whatever beer you want. But
right.
That kind of leads us into the next section, or really the main part of this whole entire thing, man, is some of the cocktails, some old-timey cocktails. So do you have any that you want to start off with?
So this one day I was making a cocktail. I was out of simple syrup, but I had honey. So I just replaced that and it gave it like a different texture. What I was trying to make is commonly referred to as a whiskey sour. However, apparently, if you were to take bourbon, honey, and some lemon juice, and then you garnish that with the lemon peel, that is when you come up with a little something called the Gold Rush. Recipe calls for 2 ounces of bourbon, 1 ounce of honey syrup, which all you do is you take 1-to-1 ratio of water and honey, kind of boil that down, and then make the syrup that way. And then 3/4 an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice. Shake it up for about 30 seconds, strain onto a rocks glass chilled, and then garnish with your lemon peel.
Interesting. Now, is there a history behind the gold rush? Did you happen to do some research and see if there's anything that really the reason why it's called the gold rush?
So I actually found out where the drink was created. It was created in New York City at a famous bar called the Milk and Honey uh,
Okay.
in the early 1900s, and it spread worldwide super quickly because this was a pre-prohibition classic. However, if we kind of think about during that time, it's probably given the name Gold Rush because of its golden color, and also takes place right around or not that far after the Gold Rush happened.
Interesting. Can you imagine going into a bar and just being like, yeah, give me a gold rush?
Well,
Especially if it's in New York, though. I mean, I can see that if it was out in Colorado or
yeah.
California or somewhere where there's more gold.
Hmm.
But going to a New York bar and then being like, here, we're going to call this a gold rush.
Yep. Well, and like honestly, if you were to go in a bar, if you order a whiskey sour, it is similar. A lot of places will make their whiskey sour with egg white for extra texture. That honey will replace that and give you that body feel. It's something I would recommend trying to anybody, especially if you like bourbon. Get yourself like a, you know, 4 to 8 year range bourbon and just try one of them.
See, I've seen a bunch of recipes with egg whites in them, but the bars that I worked at were not like the real fancy, super up class bar to where you would need an egg white or you would need an egg. A lot of the ones that I've worked at, I mean, were more commercial slash, martini, like, hey, we're gonna make Cosmos type deal, not the old fashions, Manhattans. So hearing about having an egg white thrown into your drink is always like, I totally get it, frothing it up and everything, but just never something that I worked with whenever I was a bartender.
I don't
Have
know,
you
man.
have you done that? Have you mixed any of egg whites with your drinks?
I've done it with whiskey sour recipes after I had done just basic whiskey sour, just to see what it's different. I will drink my whiskey sour either way. The weirdest thing that happened once is I ordered a whiskey sour with Jameson one day, and this was at a restaurant chain that has a bar. They literally came out with a lemonade and a shot of Jameson, and I was like, "This is not how you make this. You've done fucked up."
God, I mean, it even says it in the name, like whiskey sour.
Yeah.
There's whiskey and then sour mix. So how could they have messed up and just given you a whole bunch of lemonade and said, here?
And like I don't know if it was like something to where, because like I said, it poured like your normal glass size, just full of lemonade, and then a little itty bitty shot of Jameson, and served them separately. And I was like, what the fuck? So I don't know if maybe it's the bartender's first day, maybe the server misunderstood me, but yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah, that sounds pretty weird. I always hated it when people mess up like the simplest stuff like that. I
Right.
mean, it literally has it in the name.
Yep. Yep.
So, well, I'll move on to my first one. So, because I love rum so much, I mean, I feel as this has got to be one of the ones to at least talk about, and it's the Dark and Stormy.
Okay.
Some of the history that I wound up finding out from this is back in the early 1800s, William Gosling. And if you drink enough rum, you'll know that there's called the Gosling rum. So this guy later invented the Gosling rum, but previous to him doing all of this stuff, he was selling basically liquor in London, and he wanted to go to the New World. He wanted to come to America. So he wound up chartering a ship that had about 10,000 pounds worth of booze in it. So I looked at the research on that one and found out that it was almost $1 million worth of booze if you looked at kind of where today's money is. So the dude had a lot of booze that he was bringing over to the United States. Funny thing is though, is that the ship that he was on, they didn't make it to the United States. So previous stuff like Columbus, it took them, a couple weeks. Other people came over, and it took them about 60 days, somewhere around there. But by the time that they were on board for a really long time, almost 100 days, and they were about 700 miles off of their course, and they wound up landing off in the Caribbean, man. So I found that to be kind of funny, and more specifically in Bermuda.
Oh,
So this is like the Bermuda's unofficial but official drink, if you want to call it, because this guy, started selling booze and started a whole bunch of blending, and then came up with the Gosling rum. It's the Gosling's Black Seal, if you ever want to take a look at it. It's not too bad. I've had it a couple times. So it was really funny because then he started selling and distributing everything around that time. But it was basically around World War I is when he finally started patenting the dark and stormy, because there was a bunch of sailors that were having some ginger beer. Hey, there's a officers club that was close to them that would sell a lot of the ginger beer, and it was a factory. So he just kind of said, hey, I'm gonna mix these things together and see how it turns out. Boom, there it was. Right at the end of World War I is when he kind of patented the whole dark and stormy. So his drink was basically the color of a cloud, and only a fool or a dead man would sail under. That was his whole thing on it. A little bit more of the history behind that one. And so one of the funny things about it, though, is that sometime between World War I and the early 90s, uh, the Gosling Brothers company, the one that now runs all of that stuff, actually had to go out and file trademark claims, and they actually won them, because people were knocking it off so much. So that was also kind of fun. If you want to really know what the recipe is, basically just take a real tall glass, fill it up with ice, get yourself some ginger beer. You want about 4 to 5 ounces of ginger beer. Doesn't matter about the brand. I mean, that's completely up to you. Your standard 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce pour of the Black Seal rum. And then you can garnish it with a lime wedge if you want. Basically, stir it and boom, there's your dark and stormy.
What's your next drink then, man?
this next drink, its lore is based on kind of upon speculation.
Okay.
It was commonly found in the 1930s in the savory cocktail book, is what most people could kind of find on this. This drink is known as Blood and Sand.
All right. I don't think I've heard of that one before, even as an old-timey drink.
It is Scotch, sweet vermouth, cherry brandy, and fresh orange juice, all equal portions, served in a cocktail glass.
Okay.
The story kind of behind that is that it is supposedly linked actually to a movie starring somebody named Rudolph Valentino, the silent film star known as the Latin Lover. Valentino's performance in Blood and Sand is centered on a bullfighter and was based on a novel was said to be one of the best pictures that this Vincentine Velasco Ibanez had ever done. It's actually held as a masterpiece. It's the story's name, not the story itself or the plot that made Blood and Sand a big hit. Essentially, people believe that the Blood and Sand cocktail got its name just from the title of this movie.
It's funny how there's always some type of legend or myth or whatever saying that where things come from, and this drink gets it just because of the title of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no like, hey, it's red and blah blah blah. It's just not, here it is.
Well, and like you think you would have named it something maybe less dramatic, because you got like Sex on the Beach, or you got like Tequila Sunrise. No, this just went like full heavy metal before heavy metal. It's like, we're gonna name this the Blood and Sand.
Oh man, yeah, that's kind of funny.
I would actually give this a shot though, and I'm not big on Scotch, simply because when I went to a Scotch tasting one time, the first Scotch that I tried completely wrecked my entire palate. And so after that, all the other Scotches I tried tasted the exact same, and that's not a good thing.
Oh, what's the kind that's really like peaty? It's really real harsh.
I don't know, dude. It felt like I deep throated a permanent marker.
No, it's called like LaFleur or something along those lines. I can't remember what the hell it is, but
Is it long? God damn it! Is it what fucking Parks and Rec? Is it what he drinks? Langavulin?
no, that's not it. There's another one. I'll have to look it up later, but it's one of those ones where if you drink it the first the first time without someone really telling you that, hey, this is kind of what Scotch is like, um, you would be definitely what you just said about deep throating a marker. You're like, "Bah, oh my god."
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but man, my friend has a bottle of it. We were up at his house a couple months back, and I'm not a big Scotch drinker, but I'll do it if it's out there. But it's one of those ones where it's got to be stupid cold. There's got to be a fire. Like I have to sit there and feel as if I'm in the winter wonderland for me to drink this crap, because God, your whole thing of the marker totally can understand that, because I took one sip, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. No.
And he didn't even give me a whole lot of it too. He just gave me a little swig, because I'm like, man, if I don't like this, I don't want to waste your Scotch. And he goes, all right, I'll just give you a little bit of it. And if you like it, then I'll give you a little bit more. But if not, then I mean, you can just take the swig and be all right. And thank God, because I was like,
Yeah.
not my cup of tea.
No.
So that kind of sucks for your other ones then, man, because I've had other Scotches and blended ones and way better, way smoother. Like I don't feel as if I'm coughing up some freaking, grain.
Well, like, so my other Scotch experience I had, I've always heard good things about Johnny Walker.
Oh yeah, Walker's pretty good, but that's a blend though.
Right. But it's still a Scotch.
Yeah.
And so, I was like getting normal stuff from the liquor store one day. And I was like, you know what? I'm nearing 30. So this is in the past. I was like, let me try Scotch. Let me start with something that I know people drink. And so I went for Johnny Walker.
Now,
And
which one did you get though? Did you get red? Did you get
like
black?
what Johnny Walker
and get the blue?
drinkers don't tell you is that the Johnny Walker I got is the Johnny Walker you use to mix drinks with. I got Johnny Walker red.
Yeah, red. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess it's stuff if you want to really just ease into it, but
Yeah. No.
yeah, I was gonna say, if you got Johnny Walker blue, man, you'd be spending about $200 something a bottle for that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't about to do that on an experiment.
Yeah, so I don't know what label. There's red, there's black, I know there's white, I know there's blue, and I think there's green. I think there's green label.
So I know for sure there's one that you missed, and I think there's called a double black, which is the one that everybody in like forums that I was reading was recommending.
Double black. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, this was
I had
after,
that.
of course, I had tried the red, and I was like, do people actually like this?
And
So,
you're
but
like, oh God.
yeah, I always remember Johnny Walker as like the alcoholic Captain Planet. Just if you can think of one of those colors, you're probably right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, I don't know if your palate's any different now, if you still kind of deal with Scotch, but it's not my go-to thing.
Yeah, I don't know. When I was going to a trade school, somebody was like, Scotch is one of those things that gets better with age. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm still a kid at heart. Like, I'll drink chocolate milk if you give it to me, you know?
Yeah, but the other thing too is that the longer it is, the more expensive it is too. So you're gonna get this 20-year bottle of Scotch and know that it's gonna be better with age. Like F that. I'm not gonna sit there and wait.
Right.
Yeah, well. So my second drink that I've come up with here, and actually I was talking with another one of my friends about this because he was making it over the holidays, and I'm like, man, I haven't I haven't had one of those bad boys in a long time, and it's called the Brandy Alexander. I don't know if you've ever had that before.
Mm-mm.
So it's typically made with cream, but some of the history behind it, from what I've been reading, is that there's a couple different theories out there. First one is that it was made for a Russian Tsar, so Alexander II, but could have also been created sometime in the 20s at a wedding for Princess Victoria Alexandra, which is the daughter of King George V. Other people say that it was something with an Algonquin Round Table member, but a lot of people believe that it was basically made from Troy Alexander, who was a guy in New York City. So it seems like there's a couple drinks that are coming out of here from New York. But one of the cool things about Brandy Alexander's, though, is that it was actually John Lennon's favorite cocktail.
Oh.
So any Beatles fans out there, just know that, man, John Lennon really loved his Brandy Alexanders.
Interesting.
So it's one thing to know about a Brandy Alexander. It's actually a kind of a take off of another type of gin-based Alexander. So you can make them with rum, you can do them with coffee liqueurs, you can get creative, which we missed apparently on January 31st. It was National Brandy Alexander Day, so we are a little far behind on that. But
we need to fire our editor.
Yeah, we should have done this way before.
Yeah.
But I thought that was...
I'm the editor.
So yeah, there's a couple different ways of making it, but the original way of making it, and you'd wind up getting some gin, you'd wind up getting some cream de coco, and you would do the white cream de coco. Although I guess you could do dark cream de coco if you wanted to make it just a little bit darker. You get yourself some cream and then some nutmeg. You basically just shake it all up and strain it out into a martini glass or another type of shaped glass. And there you go. So I've seen a couple other moderations with it. Some with the vodka, you can use like Absolute vanilla vodka, and you can throw that cream de coco, that dark liqueur in there, and still get that darker flavor. But the original one was actually with, gin. So
I wonder if you could replace the cream de coco with like a Godiva chocolate liqueur.
I mean, yeah, you could. I wouldn't see why not, because then your cream is going to kind of be that base anyway.
Right.
But I think I would rather go with the vodka instead of the gin, because for me, gin is very floral. You know, it's got that piney taste to it, at least to me, because it's made from juniper berries.
Yep.
So I just don't think that mixes well with cream and cream de coco. So I would take the vodka over the gin, but I mean, I guess if people really like that kind of stuff, go for it.
Well, unlike foodies, you guys know this. When I make my my White Russians, what I usually do, instead of doing like a basic bitch vodka, I splurge and I'll go for like a double chocolate vodka, and just to get that extra taste. So you guys can, you hear something that we have here, it might be called something different, but if you just swap out your favorite, say something calls for whiskey or bourbon, and you just swap the two, you might change the drink name, but you still might get a lot of that flavor.
Yeah. But it also depends on what you're drinking though too.
Yeah.
You know, like if I switch out gin for vodka, I might lose some of that original flavor to it, but depending on what I make, you know, like, because vodka is supposed to be one of those flavorless ones, which I found was bullcrap, because I always tasted the vodka no matter what.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, you can't taste it. I'm like, yeah, I can.
Well, and like another thing is you've got your Bloody Mary, your vodka, your Worcestershire sauce, tomato juice, all that fun stuff. But if you swap the vodka for tequila, it becomes a Bloody Maria.
Yeah, Bloody
But
Maria.
if you take both the vodka and tequila away and you swap it with beer, it becomes a red eye.
Yeah, which those were also ones that were kind of crazy too, because I always remember putting the hot sauce in there
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so interesting. Brandy Alexander's. One of my buddies loved those things and just drinks them all the time. And I'm like, too much cream, man.
Yeah. Now, I think I'm on to my last drink.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that we're kind of on topic here because I've done something super similar to this, but I use gin. And this is called a brandy or a whiskey cobbler. Its most famous variation is called the sherry cobbler. Don't really have much backstory on this other than in 1862, How to Mix Drinks by Jerry Thomas suggested by using 4 ounces of whiskey in the whiskey cobbler. Which, if you look at the ingredients, it's in the day, it would be 4 ounces of whiskey to a half ounce or an ounce of simple syrup and optional club soda to fill, garnished with seasonal fruit, such as orange or lemon slices and a cherry.
Ooh, that's a lot of whiskey, man.
I mean, like, if it's something you're going to sip on all day,
Yeah, 4 ounces. I mean,
that's over.
that will get you. I mean, that's what, more than 2 standard drinks right there.
Yep.
So it get you tuned in if you drink a couple of them fast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I did, I replaced the brandy and whiskey, and I used gin. And what I did was I muddled up some orange slice, some lemon, and some lime. Poured in some simple syrup, added some club soda, and I essentially had it in like a almost like a milkshake sized glass. Fuck, that was hard to say. And I just sipped on that for like 4 hours, and that was a hell of a time.
Well, I wonder why, man, because you got yourself a milkshake sized glass.
Yeah.
Full of booze.
I mean, it wasn't full of booze. It had soda and fruit in there.
Yeah. It just reminds me of the old Jungle Juice stuff where you just dip it in and just, oh, look, there's a bunch of fruit in here too. Right. So my last one, and this is your all-time classic, is a martini. Yeah. But originally, martinis were used with gin. Kind of sticking along with the gin trade there, but it has slowly morphed into doing vodka martinis over the years. Now, when I used to bartend, people would always be like, give me a martini. And I'd always say, you want a gin or a vodka? And they'd look at me stupid because they didn't realize that it was originally gin. Instead, they would be like, what are you talking about? I want vodka. Give me Grey Goose or whatever. Yeah. So I'd always ask, but there'd always be a couple of people that sit there and be like, you know what, give me some of the London's gin or whatever type of gin I had at my bar. Mm-hmm. So that's always cool. But essentially what you do with that one is you wind up taking, your ounces of gin, throwing it in a shaker. And the cool thing about it is that there's so many different ways to do a martini. You can do it up, you can do it on the rocks, you can do it dirty, right? You can do it, dry or extra dry. And if you're looking at someone who wants to do dry or extra dry, you basically just take the vermouth and you just throw a little dip in it, or you dip it into your glass and swirl it around and then throw the rest of it out. And then, you shake the hell out of your vodka or gin, right? And then just pour it all out. So a lot of times people will do it with a lemon garnish or a lemon swirl, or they'll do a little bit of some bitters in there. But the martini, I didn't realize this too, is some of the history stuff that along with it. So going back to the gold rush thing with your other drink, this was mid 1850s ish, somewhere around there. Everyone was coming back from California because they were hitting it rich or they were just getting their own stuff. And one of the closest towns closer to San Francisco was Martinez. So they would stop into Martinez and get themselves, drinks and food and whatever. So this one guy, he apparently hit it big, and he walked into one of the bars in Martinez and said, hey man, I want to celebrate. So give me something here. And he said he wanted something much better than champagne. So the bartender at the time basically just said, all right, well, let's see what we got here. And he never heard of the drink, the Martinez Special. and he wound up putting it together, the parts of gin and starting with ice and finishing it with an olive. And the guy apparently liked it. So he had his drink himself, and then of course he had all his friends drink it, and it originally started out as Martinez, and it became the martini through, a bunch of different things because of marketing. And you have Martini and Rossi, which is the vermouth company. So it originally was the Martinez, which I found was really interesting, that I didn't even realize, because it's always martini. But it's funny how martinis have basically destroyed a lot of things over the years, between like business luncheons or just whatever, because people get hammered off of it, because they
Yep.
don't realize that it's just straight up vodka or gin. The vermouth doesn't really do anything for you. So if you like throwing up straight booze, then by all means go for the martini. And then I always hated serving it dirty, because it's just olive juice mixed with it. And I'm not a big fan of olives to begin with. But when someone said, yeah, give it to me dirty, I'm like, I don't, all right, fine. Or when they say, give it to me extra, extra dirty, like put as much freaking olive juice as you can. I'm like, damn, you're draining my olives here. Like, they need to sit in something or they're going to go bad.
Right. Yeah, see, like I'm not a big pickle juice person or pickle person generally. And like that's what I always taste when I drink like a dirty martini, is that brininess. And I'm like, nah, dude, not for me.
Yeah.
But I've had some really good martinis. Like if you look at like an appletini or like a lemon drop or
Lemon drop. Yeah.
uh
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of variations with them. And if you want fruities, I mean, Cosmopolitan is with cranberry juice.
yep.
You can have mango juice. Like there's a wide variety of things you can go with in the martini range. But old timey martinis is just straight up vodka or gin.
Yep.
But I looked up some funny things that have dealt with martinis, and apparently there's a place out in Minneapolis that will give you a 6-gallon martini, and it costs about $200, and they only allowed to give it to one person. But 6 gallons, like that's got to be for a party, because there's no way that someone's going to sit there and be like, dude, give me that 6-gallon martini. I'm just going to get stomach pumped, blackout drunk.
Yeah. No, that's not how weights and pressures work. Like you throw off your entire chemical balance.
So I also found out that apparently there's a diet out there that just consists of martinis and whipped cream.
I can get behind this.
I don't know if I can find that, man. I feel like that would be too much.
I have to
So
wash my beard a lot.
yeah. Apparently in California, there was about 30 women who were at the peak of martini happiness when 2 burglars decided that they wanted money and jewelry from them. So the women were super hammered from it that they just asked the robbers, hey, do you want some martinis? And they did, and they just didn't even rob them.
That is a Californian thing.
Like, can you imagine being in your house with this, like, hey, give me your jewelry or whatever, and you're just too hammered to go, dude, you just want to drink? And they go, yeah, sure, fuck it, why not? And then they don't even rob you.
I ain't gonna lie, dude. Like, if somebody came into my house to rob me, I'd be like, yo, homie, I'll help you find the money and we'll split it.
Yeah. You just got to show up naked, though. You got to be like, dude, I'm in here looking for shit, too.
Yeah.
Make it super awkward.
I'm already super awkward, though.
And then the last one that I found, too, was talking about an interior designer. And this designer quoted that the times are ripe for a major martini revival, as the last time martinis were important was the last depression. And this was back in 1991. So,
Bro, I was depressed like last week. Like, there ain't been no last depression recently.
I think they're talking about the Great Depression.
Still like last week. Have you seen the economy? Fuck.
Yeah. But yeah, it's some pretty funny stuff going on with martinis.
I'm not gonna lie. So there's this place that and Tuesdays and Thursdays they have half off sushi, but you have to buy a drink. And they had a giant martini menu, probably like 20 or 30 different martini variants on there. And that's how I got into martinis, was by that place.
By trying all of them so you can get half off sushi.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good at sushi too.
Nice. Yeah. Well, you got any other drinks or any things that come to mind about old timey stuff? Or do you want to save that for the next time we talk about old timey cocktails?
Well, I mean, like, I don't think we could end old timey drinks without mentioning the old fashioned.
Yeah, man. So what do you
Now,
got?
I know you know more about this than I do, so I'll let you go.
I figure you brought it up. You're going to have to talk about it.
Oh, that's fair.
Because I feel like old fashions can be very similar with Manhattans and talk about those a lot too.
Yeah. You want to take care of the Manhattan then?
Yeah, I guess we can do one more.
So, for those of you who don't know, old fashioned is super simple, not simple syrup, but it does use simple syrup. Words. 2 teaspoons of simple syrup, teaspoon of water, 2 dashes of bitters, some ice cubes, some bourbon whiskey, a slice of orange, and a maraschino cherry. Or just pour that shit all together, it'll shake, shake, shake Sonora, and you'll be okay. But this has been a drink. It took me a while to get into, and you can do it with rye, like all sorts of fun stuff. And it's just, if you want to feel like you're out with your friends and you want to maybe like impress somebody and you don't want to like just order a beer or like a classic or, you know, like a basic bitch drink like vodka and soda, order yourself an old fashioned.
Yeah.
You know,
You,
Professor Popcorn and I were meeting for the first time, and we were out at a bar, and for some reason we sat next to each other. I ordered an old fashioned versus like whatever's on tap. I think I'd be a more interesting person.
the most interesting person in the world, right?
Yeah, buddy.
Is there a history of your drink at all? Like anything of theories of how it became that drink?
I'm looking right now. First appeared in the issue in May of 1806 of the Ballots and the Columbian Repository in Hudson, New York. Wrote that a potent concoction of spirits, bitters, waters, and sugars was kind of all the rave. In the 1860s, it was common to use orange curacao, absinthe, and other liquors to the cocktail. Not really seeing anything as far as where it started or any other rumors behind it, other than one day it kind of appeared and it's been around ever since. Oh, wait. The Penn Dennis Club, gentlemen's clubs founded in 1881 in Louisville, Kentucky, claims the old-fashioned cocktail was invented there. Was invented in the honor of a Colonel James E. Pepper, prominent bourbon distiller who brought it to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel bar in New York City. Although this theory is unlikely because of the first print of the old-fashioned cocktails in the Chicago Daily Tribune in 1880, before the club was actually opened. So could be one of those things where they're like, it started here, but you know, back before trademarks and all that was a thing.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, for my Manhattan here, I mean the Manhattan is pretty simple. You just get your your rye, or there's other things of going along with it too. I'll talk about in a second. But it's basically rye, vermouth. You get your sweet vermouth, and then bitters.
Mm-hmm.
You just throw a couple of those bitters in there and just shake it up, pour it out, and there you got yourself a Manhattan. It's a pretty cool drink. You get more of that aroma with the sweetness of the vermouth, and you get more of the bourbon side of it too. So depending on how you like it, you can do it a couple different ways. You can do the Rob Roy. So, and that one's that not a lot of people will order, but when you do, you're like, oh man, I haven't made one of those in forever. So basically, the Rob Roy is you use your Scotch instead.
Oh,
So it's called a Scotch Manhattan or the Rob Roy Manhattan. And so instead of your rye whiskey or your bourbon, you would throw in your Scotch and make it the same way. So pretty easy. You can do the perfect Manhattan, and that's where instead of taking just a little bit of that vermouth, the sweet vermouth, you wind up doing a 50-50 shot with it with your rye whiskey. Or you can do the dry Manhattan. So instead of doing sweet vermouth, you use dry vermouth instead. So that kind of gives you a little bit more of a far less sweet making drink, and it gives that more emphasis on your bourbon.
fuck yeah.
So, but I guess some early first ever written mention of it was in the early 1880s, and it was in New York. So it was they had other names like the Jockey Club cocktail or the Turf Club cocktail, but basically it happened in New York, and it kind of says, hey, this was in Manhattan. But it's kind of inconclusive, so you don't really know exactly why where it's from or what that's coming at. But we'll just go with the fact that it was made in Manhattan in the early 1800s or the late 1800s.
Seems like New York was the place to be during that time.
Well, I mean, that's where they were building all those crazy buildings, and I guess work was pretty good during that time.
Right.
So, well, we kind of hit on more drinks than we anticipated. So we got 8 instead of 6.
Yeah, I think we did good.
So
You
we'll have to
do any of our foodies out there. We miss a drink that maybe you like, or maybe we miss some knowledge that you can share with us. Let us know.
yeah, let us know. We'd like to talk more about some old timey drinks.
Mm-hmm. As a fan of both old timey and drinks.
Well, man, I've got nothing else left for this episode. We'll have to start thinking about the next one.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're gonna sign off. This has been Booze, Dessert, Smoking Meats. I've been the Meat Viking.
And this is Professor Porkloin, where bacon is my safe word.
Oh yeah, buddy.